It is my pleasure to introduce the stars of tonight's show. Guido and Luigi Rosso are twin brothers and founders of 2Dimensions. With a background in app and video game design and development, Guido and Luigi combine their passions to create a no-compromise tool for designers and animators called Flair. Flair allows users to build real interactive animated graphics that run in real time in your final product. Flair was announced at Flutter Live last year in December, and I wanted to show you a video from that moment just to kind of remind you what that was.
So I want to invite 2Dimensions onto the stage. I'm a designer, and what I really like about Flutter is how easy it makes it for us to create beautiful applications. Now, as a designer, I always have big plans for what I'm going to build. I love coming up with new interactions, slick animations, epic lens flares, you name it. That said, once I've got these concepts down, I then have to figure out how I'm going to actually code all of this awesome stuff. And that's when I think, how cool would it be if I had a twin that could code it all for me? Well, I have good news. Today, we are launching a clone program.
People were laughing. The cameras didn't pick it up.
Just kidding. I am indeed lucky to have a twin, and he's an engineer. This is Luigi, by the way. But thanks to our new tool and Flutter, you won't need a complementary twin like us. We are 2Dimensions, and we're here today to tell you guys about a new product we built called Flair. Flair is a vector design and runtime animation tool that exports directly to Flutter. Guido and I built Flair so that designers like ourselves and developers can work in parallel. If you're a designer, the biggest advantage to Flair is that you don't need to work, that you do get to work directly on the assets that run in your final app. That means you don't need to design in one app, animate in another app, redline your mockups, write up a 100-page guide to basically help your engineering team redo all the work that you already did. Everything that you design in Flair is exactly what runs in Flutter. Not only does this open up your entire team to be able to quickly iterate, but it also allows you to make great design a part of your process from the very beginning right up until the completion of your app.
All right, so let's give a warm Flutter NYC welcome to Guido and Luigi. Welcome.
So while Luigi's getting set up, a couple notes from that presentation. So that's a few months ago now, 6-7 months ago. Flair is actually not a vector animation tool anymore. It is, or not only anyway. It's also raster images. We added support for PSDs. You can drag and drop PSDs. You can import images, pings. There's mesh deformations and a lot of new features that, if you're not familiar with, you should check out our website. We have a docs.2dimensions.com that explains a lot of these new features. We also have grown the team significantly. You know that I'm the designer that started this. Luigi's the developer that started the product, but it's not just us. Our first person who joined the team, other than the founders, was Umberto, who's sitting over there. He's got the white Flair t-shirt. He's an engineer. And then we've got Juan Carlos here, who actually did all the animations that you saw at the presentation. He's responsible for the robot that you're seeing hovering right now. That's a GIF. That's why it doesn't look as smooth as it should look. It's not running in Flair, unfortunately. Actually, Google Slides person who was up here earlier, we should probably chat about that. Yeah. We should get Flair running in there. So he's going to be presenting with us later today for the workshop and showing you how to build something really cool in Flair. But before we get started on the workshop, I actually want to bring up our friend David Derimer. If I'm pronouncing the last name right, David, I'm actually not sure. He's also a fellow Flutter enthusiast. You probably know him better as one of the founders of Very Good Ventures. They've created the Hamilton app and a bunch of really awesome stuff that you also saw at Flutter Live. And he's got a pretty cool announcement that I think is something you'll want to hear before we jump into that workshop.
Okay, so I'm David, as mentioned, from Very Good Ventures. So we are the team that built and maintains the Hamilton app, which is, we've been fortunate enough to be a little bit famous in the Flutter world for that. We got into it super early, pre-alpha Flutter, sort of the first major commercial app. So one of the things we've been doing recently is really looking at like what's the next iteration of the app. How do we kind of, it's been out there for almost 2 years now, and we're looking at, we're dealing with like architecture problems because a lot of the patterns and things that exist now for Flutter was not at all on the radar back then. So we're rebuilding it, we're looking at refreshing it, and we've been looking a lot at using Flair. So we've been doing some experiments. We've been doing some thinking around like what could we do with the app, with Flair that could be really interesting and exciting. So what we decided as part of this event today was what could we do that could really encourage people to use Flair, something with Flutter that would be kind of fun to do. And so basically what we wanted to offer up today was the Hamilton Flair Challenge. And so this is an opportunity for anybody that is interested in learning Flair, experimenting with Flair, to also get an opportunity to kind of participate in the Hamilton app in some way. So basically what we're putting out here, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is if you would like to experiment with Flair, if you would like to look and you're not sure how to get started, go grab the Hamilton app, look through it, find some areas that might be interesting to do. It could be a button press, there's a trivia star kind of particle effect that happens, lots of different things, or just something fun like this, something sort of like interactive digital fan art kind of thing. We just wanted to give you a muse, a focus, something to experiment with Flair, and if you make something really great, maybe it would even make it into the app. So we've been working with the Hamilton team, and we're excited to offer some prizes for this. So what we're going to do is if you submit, go to this website at the bottom. It has more information, more rules. We're going to open this to anybody who wants to participate and enter. We got a bunch of merchandise, all kinds of Hamilton gear and swag, a Broadway.com gift card. Unfortunately, even for us, Hamilton tickets are incredibly hard to get. 1-year Flair subscription, and also some notoriety, right? So what can we offer in addition to that is, obviously, if you make something really cool and we want to put it in the app, that's a great thing to be able to say that, you can point to and say that you did. Also, just an announcement to the community, and also the Hamilton team has said that, they're really excited about this. They want to see what the community can come up with, and they have about 810,000 followers on Twitter, and they're like want to get behind this and share out the work that people do. So go to the website.
Flair t-shirt. You missed
Oh yeah. Oh sorry. And a Flair t-shirt. I forgot. Sorry. And we might throw in some Very Good Ventures swag too if I can get my act together and actually order some. So yeah, give it a look. We're not going to start taking submissions until Saturday. Just to give everybody a little bit of time for it to kind of like get out there and for everyone to experiment. We figure a lot of people want to get started, and there's some steps to kind of get going. So also, major incentive here is to pay attention to what these guys are going to say, because now you have a focus where if you want to put what you learn here today into good use, it can translate to some nice prizes for you. So that's that. So go to the website, read more, check it out, and if you have any questions, let us know.
All right, thanks, David. All right, so I actually forgot to introduce the rest of the team. Let me flip this on. So I was telling you about Juan Carlos. He's our animator. You're going to see some cool stuff from him tonight. We also have 3 other people that are joining. Mandy over here has actually already joined, and Blake and Robert are going to be joining the team very soon in the upcoming months, but they're experts on Flair. If you guys have any questions tonight, they'll be walking around while we're going through the workshop. Be sure to grab them if you need any help. Again, that's Umberto over there, Mandy, Blake, Robert, and they've got Flair t-shirts and the backwards caps. That's how you can recognize them. If you need help, grab them. So I think we can just move straight into what you guys need to make the workshop happen here. Luigi's going to give you a little bit of a basic introduction. We're not going to cover a ton of code tonight. Luigi's going to do a little bit, but we want this mostly to be a Flair workshop. We want you guys to start animating, to start learning how to use the tool, and really see how useful it can be to quickly iterate and tweak things as you're building it and be able to run them in real time. And that's what we really want the focus of this to be. All right, so over to you, Luigi. So first thing that I should say, which I should have made a slide for, is that does everyone here have Flutter installed? Does anyone not have it installed on their computer? So you should go to Flutter Dev and take a quick look at that. And if you want to follow along and actually export during this process, because we're going to be working mostly in Flair, and along the way you're going to be able to export your work and actually run it in the app. And that's what the code that's up right now, the URL, that's for a little sample project that has all the assets that we're going to be using tonight. You're going to be importing some of them into Flair. And it's also got the sample Flutter code that you can run directly in your simulator, emulator, or on your actual device if you want tonight, and follow along the workshop. And the other cool thing is that Juan Carlos is going to be working out of a public file, so you'll be able to refresh his file while he's working on it and directly export his work into your little demo app if you want to. So you should check this out if you want to actually deploy during this workshop and get the assets out of it. They're in a folder that I'll go through when we get a little further along. And the other thing is, make sure that if you do follow along, you're on Flutter Stable and that you upgraded in the last week, because there's a new version out and the code that you're going to be using is compatible with that. So moving on, the first thing that we want to talk through a bit is how many people have used Flair? Have used Flair with Flutter? Awesome. Does everybody here have an account at 2Dimensions.com? Where? 2Dimensions.com. That's where Flair is hosted. So Flair is an online tool. It runs in your browser. And if you want to follow along and you want to actually do some of the animation work that Juan Carlos is going to walk you through, you really should sign up for an account. It's at here. Let me show you. Yeah, I got it up there.
Okay.
Yeah. So just go to that link, 2dimensions.com, that you see on the slide, and you're going to want to register. And in the top right where it says Your Files, you're going to create a new Flair file to be able to follow along with the workshop.
And we're going to show you that when we get to that part of the workshop.
Yeah.
But if you want to preemptively at least sign up and verify your email and all that stuff, you can do that now.
Yeah.
So what we're building is actually the little demo that you saw earlier, this little tilt effect. And the way that we're going to do it is there's a little bit of boilerplate code that I whipped together, and I'll quickly run through it because, again, we don't want to get too into the weeds of the actual code of it. But I do want to just make clear that all the code that's running is manipulating a Flair file, and it's doing it in a way that's very declarative, so that you don't have to actually, go pinpoint and find a specific thing in the file and manipulate it. You can do that, but you can also write some generic code that just goes through any file and makes it tilt in 3D like we're doing here. So that's sort of the concept that we're going to go with. I'll show you the prototype that I built as sort of like a developer. Let's just explore this feature. And then Guido and Juan Carlos will walk you through this final actual animation that they built with it, which is actually a little bit richer, the final version you'll see, that they were able to do completely on their own. I just set up the code, handed it over to them, and they ran with it, iterated, and built something cool just in design world. So basically, this is going to be the code part. I'm trying to keep it really quick. The way that Flair works is that it exports a binary file or a JSON file, but basically a blob of data that has all of your vector data, all of your images, all the animation keyframes in one file. At runtime, we call that an actor. And the reason it's called that is because we come from a game animation world, and our old product, Nima, everything you exported was an actor in a game world, whether it was a character running around the screen or a tree or anything that got mounted onto another character. So that naming system kind of carried forward, but there's another thing now that is inside of the actors, and those are called artboards. Every file can have multiple artboards, so that if you're working on, screen 1, screen 2, you'd put that in one artboard, or a button that you reuse multiple times, you can put that in a separate artboard.
Or an icon pack.
An icon pack is a great example. And the code that we built for this is sort of an iteration on top of the regular artboards and instances that we have in the Flair Flutter code base. So what's nice about our code base is that, first of all, it's all open source, but you can also extend it and make your own versions that manipulate the Flair files at runtime. And that's what the code in this repository shows. There's a little tilt actor, which basically goes through the file
and blasts out the layers in 3D space and then tilts them in response to motion on the screen. So I'll show you that just really quickly. But basically, what we have in Flair is this concept of a Flutter actor that comes with Flair Flutter. We extend it to build this tilt actor, and this is the representation of our Flair file. And what it does is then give you the ability to kind of override a shape node or an image node. So this is something that's inside your Flair file. Whenever it finds one of these, it's going to make a new version of it, and it's going to make a version that's a tilt version. So we replace all the regular shapes with tilting shapes and all the regular images with tilting images. And then basically this just shows you a little bit of the code that's actually happening. What it does is it goes through the top level draw order in the hierarchy, which we'll show you when we get to it. But basically any top level node is going to get some depth and tilt applied to it. And this is just the code that's going through that and doing it, applying transformations. And that's basically it. I'm going to save, if we have time at the end of it and anyone's really curious about how this works and how we extended Flair to do this, the runtime portion of Flair to do this, I'm happy to walk through it. But this is really not a ton of code. I think this file is 112 lines.
Yeah, since it sounds like some people are new to 2Dimensions and our product here, we might just want to quickly explain that Flair is an IDE to create animations so that designers can do everything, create the visual part and not have to code anything. And then the runtime, the part that Luigi's talking about, the Flair Flutter part, which we extended for this demo, is what actually interprets that file in Flutter. So we have, for example, a Flutter runtime, but then we also have a JS runtime that allows you to load Flair files on a website. So that's what he's talking about when he says Flair Flutter. That's our runtime for Flutter that allows you to load Flair files.
Yeah. And if this is all new, I apologize in advance, but we will have a blog post following this workshop that'll walk you through all the code steps necessary to get your Flutter project going. But I think we really want to spend as much time as possible doing the actual animation tonight. So basically what I wanted to show here is a little bit about what I was talking about in Flair. This is Flair if you haven't seen it before. You have this hierarchy. So I have one artboard here, and I just made 4 different shapes. You can see them as I hover over them. And then I made a really simple animation that just kind of spins them a little bit off sync. And then what we do is, that's basically it in Flair. Then I just exported it out. And after I exported it, I ran it through the simulator, and I got this thing. So basically, as I click, you'll see that it's kind of tilting with the screen, and I can make it
the depth, yeah.
I can make it do a little more so you can see it more clearly. And you can see that it's kind of exploding it in 3D. All those layers are getting projected, and they kind of tilt around as I move my cursor. So this is kind of where I started. And then I handed it over to them, and they built the really cool Flutter card, the Hamilton card that you're going to get to build tonight.
Do you want to show the final version of that, just so people can get excited about what we're going to be building?
Sure. Let me...
And don't worry if the Flair UI here looks scary. We're gonna walk you guys through how to use it, and it's not as scary as it looks. We get that feedback a lot, the sort of fear of empty canvas when you first open it up and you got all this UI around. Like, what do I do? We'll walk you through that really soon here.
So what I'm doing is I just exported the file, I put it into my assets folder, and now I'm just gonna swap it in the reference here. And then if I do a hot restart, you'll see the right one in here. And you can see it's got an animation, and then when I click on it, it tilts out all the layers, and when I let go, they go back to straight. So that was sort of the concept of it. That was where we started, and now I think we'll actually take you through building this from literally from an empty canvas to having this running on your screen.
So yeah, like Luigi was saying here, we're gonna make this file public. So you can go to, where's the slides? Is it here? You can go to, oops, that's not what I want. You can go to this link, 2dimensions.com/a/Juan-Carlos, and you'll see Juan Carlos's profile on 2dimensions.com, and you'll see the very latest file on there is the one that he's going to be working on now. He's going to be working on it. I'll be describing it so that he doesn't have to do both things at the same time, which is, if you've ever presented before, you know that it's not super easy to do. So he'll be building that on his profile. You can just click on that file, and if you want to see what he's actually doing in Flair, you can hit refresh and see what he's doing in real time. So open up that link, and you'll see this file that we're about to create, which is public. I'm going to name it Hamilton Workshop, and you should see it there on his profile. In fact, if I just open it up here, 2dimensions.com. You'll see it's right here, Hamilton Workshop. If you go open in Flair, it's empty right now, but you'll be able to follow along and see what he's doing. All right. So I'm actually going to just cover a few basic things in Flair first before you come up, Juan Carlos. A few basic things to know is up here we have these two tabs, which are the basic workspace that you're in. It's design and animate mode. So when you're working in Flair, you're either designing, which is like creating shapes, building your file, or you're animating. And when you're in design mode, you can do stuff like go to this Create Tools UI menu up here, and you can create something like a rectangle. You can, you're still in create mode, so you need to switch back to translate here, or you can just hit T. You can grab it, move it around, you can change its colors, and all of this is the basic setup pose, the design pose. None of this is being animated. If you then switch to animate mode, you're now adding keyframes on any of these properties. So if I move it here, and then I move the timeline, and I move it there, I'm now basically animating my shape. So those are the really basic concepts. Juan Carlos is going to show you some much cooler stuff than basic stuff, but it'll be easy to follow along, and you should be able to understand what's happening. If you don't, again, grab any of the guys walking around and ask them for help. All right, Juan Carlos.
Excuse me.
The what? Origin at 0.5. Oh yeah, so one of the first things he needs to do, and you all need to do, is set your artboard. So click on the artboard. Yep, and you can see we have this origin value on the right. So you want to set that to 0.5 and 0.5, both for X and Y. And what you'll see is that the origin now moves to the center of the stage. And the reason for that is that Luigi's code is tilting the Flair file from that origin point. So if we leave the origin at the top left there, when you tap in the middle of the screen and start tilting, you're going to get this really weird tilt from the top corner. It's not going to look right. So you want that origin to be in the middle so that the tilt originates from there. So make sure you do that first. All right. So what's the first thing you're going to do?
Size.
All right. So he's going to set the size of the artboard.
Like this, no?
All right. So he's at 1024 and 1498 for width and height.
Okay, beginning for the background.
Okay, so he's going to create a rectangle for the background first. You just hover it. Yeah. So he's creating this rectangle that's going to go in the background, and he's going to position it to take up the whole screen. So the same size, 1024. I forget what you had there. Good thing you remember that. 1498.
And center.
And then he's going to center. He's going to put it at 0, 0, because remember, we put the origin at 0, 0, so that's just easy. And you can also use our align tools, but that works too.
Okay, some color.
Okay, so he's going to set the background color.
And I want to use the gradient.
Okay, so he's going to set a gradient. So show them again when you click on the fill here. So click on the shape, you'll see in here. So this right hand corner, I didn't explain this. The right hand column that you see there, that's called the inspector. Anything that you have selected, you'll see the properties on the right hand side there. It's pretty common in design tools if you've used anything like Sketch or anything like that. It's Illustrator. You select something and you get its properties on the right. If you scroll down, it's a shape. You'll see that it has properties like fill and stroke. So he's going to the fill option, and when you click on that rectangle there that has the color, it'll bring up a pop-up that are your fill options. And then on the top left there, he switched it from a solid to a gradient. So now he's got some gradient controls. Yeah, there's a radial gradient. He's just going with a linear gradient here. And you have some stops. Do you want to? Yeah. So the first stop here that he has selected, he's going to change the color to kind of an orange color. Yeah.
The second is more orange. Maybe,
okay. And then select the second gradient stop, and he's going to go with something maybe a little more saturated. There you go.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, like an orange, or like a more reddish orange.
Yeah, you can.
And he's going to move the stop. So you can see on the stage there, you can grab the gradient stop and you can move it.
Okay.
You're gonna
And the other is I make the stroke.
Yeah, so the stroke is the outline around the shape, and he's going to make that black.
Oops.
And you can see what he's doing here is he's clicking and dragging on the input field. So if you don't really know a number that you want to use, and you just kind of want to quickly test some stuff out, all of our input fields in Flair, you can click and drag either up or down to move the value up and down. And you can actually hold shift while you're doing that to make it move faster. So if you want the numbers to move faster or slower. So it looks like, where did you land? At 60 thickness?
Yeah, 60.
All right.
60.
So 60 looks good.
And the corner.
And then he's going to give it some corner radius to make it look rounded.
Yeah, something like this.
Okay, so he's sort of created like our card, in the app. You could see that when Luigi was showing you the initial demo there, it kind of looked a bit like a card. So this is the background card.
Okay, and name.
What he just did there is very important. If you value working with other people, you name your layers. Otherwise, they will. You will drive them crazy when they're trying to work in your file and trying to understand the hierarchy. It looks easy now. There's just a shape there, but when we're done, the hierarchy will be pretty complicated, and you want to make sure you name the layers.
Okay. Next, look.
Okay,
Please,
so
no?
he's going to lock it. I don't know if you could see there. Do it one more time just so they can see it. When you hover over a layer or a object in your hierarchy, there's a little visibility and a lock icon. If you lock it, it'll prevent you from selecting it when it's on the stage, which when things get more complicated and you're trying to animate stuff, it's nice to know that you can't accidentally move something that you really don't want to move. So we know we're not going to want to animate this later or change it, so he's just going to lock it.
Okay. Next, start.
Okay, so we'll go straight with stars. You saw that there were one of the symbolic Hamilton shapes is the star with a character on top of it. So we're going to make this big star. And I don't know if you caught that there, but when he dragged and dropped, we don't have shortcuts. It's not displaying the shortcuts. But if you hold shift, it'll make sure that it stays proportional. So drag it without shift. So let go. Yeah, see that happens. If you don't have shift, you get free form. You can make it any width and height that you want. But if you hold shift while you're doing that, and this applies to any tool, it'll actually keep it proportional. Which, again, if you've worked with other design tools, it's pretty common. But if you haven't, that's a nice, easy way to do that without having to go and tweak your settings later. And it looks like you're centering it.
Yeah, put in
So,
center.
yeah, you can do that or undo it real quick. So you can set the position here to X and Y 0 and 0 because the origin is at 0, 0. That's easy. But you might not always have your origin at 0, 0, but you still want to align things to the center of the artboard. So one way to do that, I'll just move this over here, is to just use our align tools here. So by default, if you only have one thing aligned, it's going to align to its artboard. So if we just hit center here.
Only one thing selected.
Yeah, only one thing selected, sorry. It'll align to the artboard. If we had two things selected, they'd be aligning to themselves. And there's interesting things you can do there where you can create key objects and align around them, but I won't go into all that now. But just if you need to quickly center something on your artboard, that's a quick way to do it.
Okay.
All right, what next?
Next, edit. No?
Yeah, so we're going to convert it to a path. So right now, the shapes that you can create from our create tools, you want to open that real quick? That shape drop down there, all of those are procedural shapes. Am I saying that right, Luigi? Parametric shapes. So they're basically they're created with code. We can't actually modify their vertices. We have to convert them to a path to be able to modify the vertices. And what that does is that we then can't change properties like width and height or the size of the star, the roundedness of corners and stuff like that. Actually, that's still you can, but you can't change the number of points in the star and stuff like that anymore. Once you convert it to a path, it kind of like bakes it how it was created. So if you look at the star right now, the properties you have stuff like, oh no, hang on and do it real quick. Oh, we lost our centering there. So if you look here, you'll see that there's an inner radius property that you can change. There's a star points, and that's because this is still a procedural shape here that we haven't converted to a path. But once we do convert it to a path, you'll see that we lose those properties, but we can now modify the vertices of it. So, yeah, you want to go into edit vertices. So after you hit convert path, you'll get an edit vertices option. And now you can see that he can select the top point of the star and delete it, right? Or you want to select all three? Okay. Yeah, okay. So just that top arm of the star, I don't know what it's called, but we're going to chop it off.
Triangle.
And yeah, triangle. And now we've got sort of our floor for our Hamilton character to stand on. All right, so now you can either hit escape or enter or done editing on the top right of the inspector to get out of this mode. And what are we going to do next?
Color.
Okay, so we're going to give the star another gradient.
Yes. It feels in black.
Okay, so the first stop is black.
And
the second stop
is like.
Okay, a little bit orange.
Yes. And dark.
Oh, and a little bit darker. Okay, so he's creating kind of a fall off, like as if there was some fog, effect there. It looks like it's got some atmospheric scattering or something like that, right?
And no stroke.
And no stroke on this one. We want it to look flat. Yeah. All right. Are we going too fast, too slow? How's everybody feeling? Yeah.
Is the file supposed to be workable right now?
Oh, we will do that, yes. So one thing I didn't do here, I made it public, but I didn't hit allow fork.
Okay.
So allow fork allows you to fork the file, but more importantly, it allows you to export it. You don't necessarily need to fork it. You can just go straight to Juan Carlos's profile, and you can try exporting this file in its current state and loading it in Luigi's code that you can grab off the GitHub link we had up earlier. So I'm going to enable that, and I'll show you real quick what that looks like. So if I go to Juan Carlos's profile here, oh, that's not the right link. There. You can see that, well, I can't do this now because we're signed in as Juan Carlos, but if it were someone else, you could open in Flair and you could actually you could access in here directly his export button. If you don't have allow fork enabled, someone who's previewing your file can't use that export button. So they can't download the file, and they basically can't use it to load it in a runtime. They also can't copy anything out of the IDE here. Everything's sort of locked, and your stuff is basically only in read-only mode. So yeah, is that good, Blake? We're good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so everybody following along? The speed is okay? All right, I see nodding heads. Good.
If anybody gets stuck, just put up your hand to get some floaters that are floating around and
Perfect.
they'll come back.
All right, so what next one, Carlos?
Name for that
Sure. So we're going to name this layer.
is big star. What is
We've got a US keyboard. He's used to Spanish. It's a little different. The underscore here?
okay.
Shift underscore. Yeah. There you go.
Star front.
All right, so this is big star front.
Okay, because now it's duplicate. Is with.
You want to? Oh, you duplicate it? You can do Command D. Or no, sorry, Command J.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Command J is a shortcut to duplicate. Command D was my mistake, is deselect. So just to show you how that works. So you can do Command J, and now we've got a duplicate of big star front.
Okay.
But we're going to rename it.
This is back.
And it's big star back.
Okay. And now I can go here to draw order for put the back.
Okay. So he's going to go into draw order, and he wants to make sure. So one concept that's very different in Flair from other design tools is that we have broken apart the hierarchy and the draw order. So most tools like Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff like that, when you're looking at your layer list, it's both your hierarchy, if you group things in there. Sketch as well operates the same way. So does After Effects. But it's also the order in which things draw. And like Luigi mentioned, we come from a gaming background, which is where we started building our tools in, and there's often a lot of scenarios where you don't want your hierarchy to be locked to your draw order. You want to, for example, be able to have a character holding a weapon in their hand, like a sword or something, and be able to have that draw differently from the draw order. Like, for example, they might holster it or put it behind their body, and then when they pull it out, they want it to be in front of their body. And we still want it, though, to be tied to that character's hand. So in the hierarchy, we want it in the same spot, but we want the draw order to change. Another example, if any of you saw the Flutter Live demo that we did in December that Martin was playing the video of earlier, there was a demo of a planet, Earth, with the moon spinning around. You can make the moon spin around and go behind Earth and then go in front of it, but without having to do any complicated duplicating of the moon. Like in other software, you might have to create a duplicate moon that goes behind and another moon that goes in front. With Flair, you can just key the draw order and make it jump in front and not have to mess with your hierarchy. So he switched over here in this tab in our hierarchy pane here. There's a hierarchy tab and a draw order tab. And he's just making sure that the background is at the bottom, and big star front is in front and big star back is in the back.
Okay, so now scale.
Yeah, the only thing though that we should bring up at this point, which is just because of how Luigi's file works, Luigi's file actually is looking at the depth of the hierarchy in this demo, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah, so the way Luigi's code works, and we'll show this when we start dropping it into there, it's actually looking at the order here to determine the depth. So we actually
three-dimensional depth.
So in this case, in this particular case, for the three-dimensional depth, we do want to make sure that our background is at the bottom.
Oh, you're right.
In the hierarchy, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just because of how Luigi set up the 3D depth there.
It's to keep the code short for the 3D depth stuff. If we have to process the draw order too, it would have made... We could make it so that you actually can swap the draw order and things actually move in 3D, but we wanted to keep that code fairly digestible, especially if you're going to be looking at this right after. If someone wants to take it as an exercise to make the draw order work with the depth, that's the right way to do this, but we wanted to keep the code to 120 lines or so. So we use the hierarchy order of the top level nodes. So that means anything that's directly inside of the artboard is something that's going to get exploded as a individual group. That means if you put 5 stars in one group, those 5 stars are going to be all on the same layer. If you put the 5 stars directly in the artboard as direct children of the artboard, then each one of those 5 stars is going to get its own depth, and they're going to be one in front of the other in 3D space. It's just a quick and easy way to make that.
We'll show you when we'll intentionally leave a mistake here with the draw order when we export it, so you can see what's going on and what you might run into, and then we'll fix it and export it correctly so that makes sense. All right, so next step. Are we making more stars or?
No, scale this, the back star.
Okay, so the back star, we're going to scale it down, or are you scaling it up?
Scale more and change the color.
Okay, so he's got the scale tool selected. So if you want to click on the scale.
Sorry.
There, yeah. So he hit S, which is a shortcut to select the scale tool, and that lets you on the stage click and drag the selected item that's currently selected. If you click and drag anywhere on the stage, it's going to scale it up or down depending on how you drag.
Yeah.
So you're making the back star bigger than the front star.
Yeah, this is the front and this is the back.
Okay.
And change the color of the back.
Okay, so now he's going to make the background gradient a little bit lighter, so it looks like it's, you know, has more of that atmospheric effect, like the fog. So he's making that bottom stop lighter. And are you going to do the same thing for the top one, or are you going to leave the top one? Okay.
No, I do the same.
Okay, that works.
Okay. Group in one node.
Okay, so we want these things, the star to draw at the same depth. So he's going to group them into a node. So he's got them both selected, big star front and big star back, and he's going to hit Command G. Command G on a Mac, Control G on Windows.
Yeah, is this?
So that created a group, which is a node. And nodes in Flair, by the way, are the simplest type of object that you can have in Flair. It's basically everything that you see in Flair is a node, whether it's a simple group, an image, a shape, or eventually text that we're working on and will be launching soon. Anything in Flair is an extension of a node. And a node is basically a simple object that has X and Y properties, scale, and rotation. And then everything else, when we add bones, they start having properties like length. When it's an image, it starts having properties like width and height and source. And that's really it. A node, think of it as the most basic object that you can create, basically to add a transform space to anything. You can keep hitting Control G multiple times or Command G and just get different transform spaces if you need to do nested levels of rotations, scales, translations, and all that. So we're simply going to group those two stars together so that they render at the same height, right? Or at the same depth.
Yeah, make the name.
Yeah, he's going to name it because he's following best practices.
Big star.
He's not going to be a jerk to anyone else who's got to look at this later.
Oops.
Oh, you hit Command minus.
Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Stop doing that. Actual size there.
This, what do you command now? This.
Oh,
this?
shift underscore, yeah.
Shift. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So
now
he named that big star.
This node, I can change all. No?
Okay, so now if you hit S, you can drag and drop anywhere, and you can. This is what I was saying about layering transform spaces. You can see that you can grab this single node and scale it, and it applies everything to its children. So he can scale all of them together. All right, so you're trying to basically get the proportions right here, so it looks good.
Yeah.
And so we have space to put that Hamilton text on top and everything else later.
Okay, next character or more stars?
What do you think?
Character.
Yeah.
About the composition.
Let's do the character. Yeah.
Okay. We need import.
So we're gonna hit in our assets panel down here. We're gonna hit the import button. You can also drag and drop, but you need the files that we had up in GitHub. So hopefully you've checked those out. And there's some assets under there. Where are those, Luigi? Tilt card.
If you have the folder open, it's called Workshop, and in there there'll be a Hamilton character PSD, and there's also an SVG file, which is going to be for the text.
So you can import both of those now. You can just either select them both here, and hold Shift, yeah, and hit Open, or you can drag and drop them, and you'll see them pop up in your assets folder here. And then you can drag and drop those out. And one thing that's interesting about the PSD is if you want to show there's that little expanding arrow. You can actually see all your layers there. So if for some reason you want to only grab a layer, you can do that. But for the most part, the reason that importing a PSD is cool is that it actually will keep all the layer positions without having to manually go and position everything yourself. So if you grab that Hamilton character at the top and drag it out onto the stage, you'll see that the layer positions are all maintained for you, which is a lot easier than having to import everything one by one. All right, so these are basically 3 images. Is our character here. So we're gonna try to position.
Something is scale.
Okay, so he's hitting S with all 3 of them together and scaling it down, just dragging on the stage to scale it, and then T to move to translate.
Okay, I need to make a group too with this.
Okay, so he's gonna Command G to make it into a group, so they're all together under one node.
Yeah, name.
All right, we're gonna name this character.
And now I want to change the node. Okay. And use
So
this.
he wants to reposition the node. So he's gonna use this feature called freeze on the right here of the inspector, you can typically when you move a node, and if you move anything, a bone, anything that has children underneath it, if you translate it, so try moving it now without freeze, you'll see that we're moving, all the children are moving with the node. That's the power of hierarchy, right? That you can move one object and all the children below it move together, or they rotate together. You can just grab it and rotate it real quick. Show them, like, if we were to animate this, we're just animating one rotation property, and all those other images are rotating together. So it's a lot easier than having to go and manually set up every single image to rotate. But there are cases where, for example, you've rigged your character with a lot of bones that you might need to reposition that bone. Or in this case, we need to reposition this node because we want the scale effect or whatever effect that we're doing to happen from a different location. So what we do is we go into freeze, and we will set it to images in this case because that's the images. Yeah. We don't have joints, which are for bones. And now if he moves the node, the children will appear to remain in the same position. What it's actually doing is that it's offsetting those as we're translating the node. It's doing the calculation for us so that the images appear to remain in the same spot. In world space, they remain in the same spot. And he's put that at the bottom of the character, kind of centered. And that, yeah. And once you're done moving that, you can go to disable freeze because you don't want to keep using that.
No.
But now you can move it from there, and you can also do something cool like, can I just show this real quick? Like, if I wanted to scale this character now, see, I can stretch him from that position, which we're not going to do this. This isn't like the effect we're going for. But this is sort of cool. Like if you're trying to make your character, jump, and then when he hits the floor, kind of do a little bounce like that. It makes sure that the scale happens from the right spot. So there's a lot of things you can imagine, like a ball that we're trying to animate, right, and make it bounce. You would want it to have its node, its pivot point in that position where he just put it. Also, rotating him, for example, now can happen from here, right? So, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to do that. Show us why you did that. Why did you put it down there?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I need the control of the character was here.
Okay.
I can change this.
Okay, so he wants to be able to scale it while he's on while the feet are sort of on the floor, but he wants to be able to control the scale of the character without having to constantly move him back down or up or down. Now he can scale it and it will stay locked to the star correctly.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure I can do that. Is he in the center?
Okay, so make sure your node is centered.
Yeah.
You just selected the node and hit center, so that center, and then he's hitting S again. You hit S once to activate the tool, and then click and drag to just scale him down a little bit. Just trying to get the right proportion here.
Yeah.
By the way, you don't have to create this exactly the same. Hopefully you're creating something different, especially if you are planning on submitting something for the competition.
Okay, now I want to create the cape.
Okay, so now we're going to get a little more fancy. Actually, you know what? As a first step, to show sort of the iteration process of this, why don't we export this real quick and show how easy it is to get it to run in Flutter without needing to change any code.
Okay, this is okay, no? Yes.
So, yeah, you can, why don't you make one more star real quick, actually?
One more star. Okay.
Yeah, because we can show that mess up we were talking about earlier. So let's make one other star.
Shift.
Yeah. And so what he did there is you can right click on the stage, and if you have multiple items that are maybe blocking your view and you want to select something below it, you can right click and you'll get a list of all the layers that are under that pixel that you clicked on, so you can make sure you're selecting the right item. And do something like just this isn't going to be the final thing, but let's do something like just position it here, and then say this is like actually over here. We want this star to go behind the character, but we're actually intentionally going to leave it in front and just show what that looks like and how easy it is to fix. So you got to move it right. You drew it inside the character, so put it maybe at the very top or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and your background's on the back. And here, let's just export it.
Yeah.
All right, so go to export. And this is intentionally going to look messed up. Yeah. So yeah, just that's fine. And Luigi, what do I do here? Where's the project? So just back to the assets folder here. That's where Hamilton V2 goes. Okay. And it goes in your downloads. So you called it Hamilton Workshop. So when you download from Flair, it'll go in your downloads. If you're on Mac, Windows, I'm assuming, has a similar folder. And he's going to drag that file that we just exported it and put it into our assets folder of the project. And if you're not familiar with this feature in Flutter, this is actually really nice. All we have to do is basically copy that name and replace it here. And the reason why this works is because in our pub spec, you can supply a folder to your assets, and then anything that's in there will get automatically copied over, which is a really nice feature that was added. So now all we have to do is do a hot reload, and it'll, we might need to actually restart it, since a hot restart actually to get the app there. And let me make this a little smaller so we can see them together. And, yeah, so we do a restart, and now you can see the characters there. And it's not tilting quite as much as we want it to, because it's it's only got a few layers. And we've got a few bugs happening now. So all right, let's like figure this out. So the Hamilton character, the draw order actually looks okay here. Our Hamilton character and the star are drawing above our card, which is what we want. But you'll notice that when we click on it, Hamilton sort of stays in the background and the card comes forwards, and it almost looks like the card is back. And that's because we didn't fix our position in the hierarchy like I was mentioning, which Luigi was explaining. The code is looking at this order to determine the depth that it's going to explode it when you click on it. So you can see Hamilton's going in the background, and that's because the character is at the background here, and our background is actually above. So let's move that background down. Let's put the character above the big star. So our character is here, big star, and then the star here is in the foreground. Do we want that? Do we want the star in the front, or do we want it here? We can leave it here.
Yeah.
And let's try that again. Just kidding. Do export. All right. And hit export. And then I'm going to grab my new file here. Can I just replace it, or do I need to rename it?
Just replace it.
Okay. Replace, and then Shift R. Oh, let me bring it up. And now when we click on it, you'll see that Hamilton is in front of the card. And that's more what we want. All right, so let's keep building this. What are we gonna do next? The cape.
The cape.
Okay. All right, so, oh yeah, he's panning around the stage, by the way. You can hit either spacebar and click and drag, or, which is we find a lot faster, just right click, and
If you have a mouse, it's really fast.
If you have a mouse, it's fast, yeah. And you can quickly pan around without having to switch tools.
Okay. Okay, I want to use the pen.
Okay, so we're going to go with the pen tool. So we're getting into fancier design tools here.
Make something very simple.
Okay, so he's just going to do three vertices there, just a simple triangle. And then he's going to hit T to go into move.
Okay.
And sort of just, you want it to look somewhat like this. You can hit enter when you're done editing your vertices, and
change the color.
It's going to make it black to match the character, and probably lose the stroke too, right?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so then we're gonna position the cape
Something like this.
something like that, yeah, near the character.
Something more.
Okay, he's gonna move the vertices around to. You want it to kind of create a clean line with the hairline there, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, they'll look good, right? Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Next, must start. No?
Okay. So we're gonna make some more stars to
Okay.
give that effect, the depth effect, make it look more rich, like there's more stuff there.
Oh, sorry, I have a problem here because I have the.
So we had the. So yeah, let's explain how shapes work. Shapes are this top layer here, the star, is a shape layer. Underneath it, you can have multiple paths, and that's a powerful feature because you can apply multiple fills, and you can apply strokes and fills to multiple paths. So, for example, if you're trying to do more complicated animations, we won't go into it all now. There's reasons why you want to be able to move separate shapes or separate strokes and make sure that their fills and strokes are affected by one property, and that gets really cool when we do stuff with trim paths. Which, if you've been following us, you've seen that that's a new feature we launched a few months ago that lets you create basically the stroke animates around a path, and there's a lot of reasons why you might want that to apply to multiple shapes. So what happened here is that Juan Carlos had this star path selected when he used the pen tool.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you are actually creating a shape under there. So, actually, you don't. If you have the path selected, if you have a path selected under a shape, you are creating it within the context of this path. So if you see that I start clicking here now, when I close it, nope, it's still not happening. I don't know how you did that one, Carlos.
So when you enter this one.
So,
You.
oh, maybe, you know what, you were in edit path. That's what you were in here. So hang on.
I think
So if you're in here and you hit enter and then you start drawing, that's what happens.
Yeah.
In that case, you're creating shapes in the same paths, in the same shape. So we don't want that, but fortunately it's easy to fix. We're just going to grab this path here and we're going to drag it into a new shape, but we don't have a shape yet, so that's not going to work if we drag it out. So let's do, we're just going to select our artboard and we're going to make a new shape. Did that make it? Yep, new shape here. And we can drag our old path under new shape. And that should be correct. Yep. We can delete that temporary one I made. And we should be able to set the fill back to black. And we still have, oops. So we're still in edit shape, so hit escape. There you go. Just kidding. Why is that not working? Hit escape. And, oh, you gotta go T. But then that gets created there.
Yeah, because okay.
So
I think
we should probably just delete this and do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start over. We're gonna do the pen shape one more time.
Okay. And now I
Make
don't
sure
have
we have nothing selected.
Set,
Yeah.
And right here, say the same.
You're gonna create the triangle again.
Like this, okay.
And you're gonna give it a black fill. Hide the stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like it's raining outside. Yeah.
Maybe it'll be cooler tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
And now it's here.
So
I need
where
to
do you want
put
that to
in
be?
the character.
In the character node. So his new cape shape, he's dragging it in the character node that we made before because we want to make sure that the cape is rendering at the same depth as the character, right? We don't want the cape to look like it's in front or behind the character in the depth of the 3D space. We don't want it to look crazy far away
now
from the
it's
character.
all together.
Yep. So now it's all drawing at a single depth.
Okay, stars.
Okay.
I
I'm gonna
want
make some more
to
stars.
Change this in edit mode.
Okay, so he's
I
going into
need-
edit vertices. By the way, you can go into edit vertices quickly by just hitting enter. That's what he did there. So you can either hit edit vertices there in the inspector or just hit enter on your keyboard.
I need all the vertex in the same line.
Okay.
So
So
I want to do is take this.
yeah. So he wants a star to match the star of the Hamilton star, which is straight across the
Yeah.
top, right? So you don't want this little angle that those two vertices have.
And take
So you're going to grab that vertex and look at its Y position.
Yeah, it's right.
Yep.
And
And you're going to make
move
it the same as the other one. So he copied the Y position from this guy right here, this vertex, and he applied it to these two. So now our star looks like the Hamilton star.
Yeah. And
And then he's done editing.
And I want to put a node for star. No?
Okay, so he's going to group it into a node.
This. And this is a star 1.
Okay, name it star 1.
Star, shift. Okay. Change the size.
Okay, scale it up.
Scale.
Move it around, you know, create your own composition here. You don't have to do exactly what he's doing. How many of these stars total are you going to create?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7?
7.
Okay.
I duplicate the.
Yeah, so you're going to hit
Yeah.
Command J.
Just a few of them too, and show the cape.
Yeah. Yeah, why don't you just make a few of these and then we can add them later.
Okay.
Get to the cape because that's the more
Okay.
exciting part.
So, like,
Is that a best practice, those layers to be snake cased?
What do you mean by same case? The question was is if
snake cased, like
snake cased. With the underscore, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
or like
Um,
you have spaces in it?
You can have spaces. The question was just for the mic is if there's a best practices for naming layers. I think within teams people have different best practices. We like to use underscores, but there's no reason why you could totally use spaces. Or actually, Luigi maybe has some additional thoughts.
The only reason why it is a best practice, or at least it's convenient, is if you want a reference to them in code and you want to name a code with the same variable. It's nice to be able to do that. You can't name a variable with a space in it. So if you just, if someone's referring to it as the cape and it's called the cape the same way everywhere, or star 1 is star 1 the same everywhere, it's just easier to then find it. But apart from that, you can look them up through when you look for a node in Flair through the runtime, you look for it via string name. And so that string can be literally anything.
Okay. So there actually is a good reason to do that.
this is 2. Oops. This is 3.
Okay. So he's just naming them 1, 2, 3.
Oops.
And we're just going to move them around a bit here. Scale them differently so they look like they're a little more dynamic.
Yeah, I change color.
Okay.
A little, the color.
So, yep, so we're going to change the color. Again, make it look like it's actually in the atmosphere there. The things that are closest to the screen are full black. As they go further back, we want them to get a little bit lighter and blend with the background more.
I want to copy the color.
Okay, so he wants to copy the color here, so he's going to grab the hex value there and hit Command C, yeah,
See this.
and then paste it to the other star and the hex value,
Yeah, this.
and make it a little bit brighter. All right.
Okay. More stars.
No, I think let's do the cape. Then we can add the scars afterwards. I think the cape's the more exciting part to learn some new animation tools. But before we can animate, we have to build bones, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna use bones to animate this cape. He's gonna show you a pretty cool way to make the cape look like it's moving in the wind, and we're gonna do that with bones.
I make the bones, the body too, or only the cape? What do you want?
What do you need to make the cape flutter?
I need one bone here, the body bone.
Okay, so
Okay.
we need a body bone. So he hit B, by the way, if you want to
More.
show the.
I need the body and the head.
Okay. So take it a step back. Go up here into the
sorry.
create tools and show them where the bone is. Yep. Go transfer, not the transfer, the
Yeah.
another one next to it. Yep. Create tools, and you have a bone tool there. So all your create tools are under that menu, and you can see you have nodes, you have artboards, you have solos, which we won't go into, but just so you know what that is, that's a way to quickly switch the visibility of one object or infinite amount of objects underneath that node. So basically it's a node that lets only one object underneath it display, and it's basically a radio button, and it's a quick way to do frame by frame effects. But we're not going to use that here. We're going to go with a bone, and you can also hit B to quickly access that tool, which is what he did.
Yeah,
He doesn't have anything selected
yeah.
because if he's got something selected, it could place it in the hierarchy with that object. And then he's going to make a hip bone at basically the pelvis of the character, which is common in character design. You want to start there because that becomes your central node to be able to move the character around. And
this is the body bone.
And that's the body bone. So when you're creating bones, you see where he's clicking, it's adding new joints, and it's creating a bone in between those joints. So those were 3 clicks that he did, and it created these 2 bones.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as a root bone, which is that star shape there, or the diamond shape. And to explain that a little bit, you'll see, here I'll just take over 1 sec. You'll see that the root bone here, as he was drawing that, it created a root bone and then 2 bones underneath it. Now the root bone has properties like position, X and Y, and scale and rotation. So you can move a root bone. You cannot do that with other bones. Regular bones only have length, scale, and rotation. And that's because when you're animating a bone, you typically want it to rotate. That's how you create animations with bones. You occasionally want to change the length. There's reasons why you want to make things stretch or stuff like that, but generally, like the basics, when you're learning the basics of animation, you want bones to rotate. And you can't move the position of this bone because it would break the skeleton, right? We get into more advanced situations where you can break bones, and we have constraints that allow you to do that, because as you create more complicated rigs, there are reasons why you might want to do that. But for the basics of bones, you don't want bones to break. You want them to stay connected. And so your root bone here is what actually allows you to transform the bone. All right.
Okay.
That's the basics of bones.
Yes, very simple. Like this.
So he's moving the node, so it's at the top there.
I want to name.
Okay, so name your bones.
This is the root.
This is
Body.
root body, okay.
Yeah, this is body.
Body bone. And then, I just call it body, that's fine.
Yeah. The next. And this is head.
Okay. So we've got
Okay.
root body, body, and head.
And now the cape.
Okay. So do you need to make bones for the cape?
Yeah, I need 3 bones.
Okay.
The cape is very simple.
Okay.
If you 3 bones is good.
So we only need 3 bones to make the cape
Yeah,
animate?
I don't have
So you don't want
selected.
anything selected here? Okay. You're not going to make them a children of your skeleton? Your main skeleton?
For what? For
For the bones of the cape?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just set the
Yeah.
okay. So nothing selected, and he's going to draw
Selected only
3 more bones. So the root bone first, then the second bone, and the
like
third bone.
this.
And you're just following that outline of your cape.
Something like this. This
Okay,
is
so let's explain that. Go back 1 sec. So when you have a bone selected and you have B enabled, which is the bone tool, if I draw another bone from here, it's going to extend that chain. Looks like we're getting some emergency alert on our phones here.
It's bad.
We're in a flash flood warning. Avoid flooded areas. Well, we're in a skyscraper, so I think we're okay. Yeah. 10:15. Yeah, we have time. It's only 8:20. So what he did here to start a new chain, oops, is you deselected, right?
Yeah.
So how did you deselect? Did you hit Command D?
Yeah.
So you hit Command D, and then still with a bone tool, you can now make a new root here. And is that what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how you can create different chains.
Yeah, exactly. I need. Oh,
So you still have the tool, the bone tool selected. So hit T to go back to translate.
Okay. And select.
So he's selecting the two,
these. I want to
3
change the
bones.
size.
Okay, so these
that
bones are
bone.
really big.
Yeah.
They're kind of getting in the view of our IDE here. So with all them selected, in the inspector, you'll see that there's this bone size property. That's a slider. You can drag it down and just make them smaller so that they're easier to work with. And that doesn't affect anything at runtime. It's just purely for the IDE so that it's easier to see.
Put the name.
All right, it's going to name these. This root cape.
Cape. This is
Cape.
cape 1.
Cape 1.
Cape 2.
You're not selected.
No, sorry. 2.
Okay.
And this, because it's separate, I have a other root.
No, you're not selected. All right.
Cape 3. Is correct?
Okay, so it's calling this root cape 3
Cape 3.
and cape 3. All right.
Okay, and now I need
So this might be a little confusing right now, but you'll see when he rigs this why we need all these bones.
I have this and
Okay.
this.
You gotta select them both, or
Yeah. And this is the body, no?
Yeah.
Okay. I need this connect with the body.
okay. So
This with the body.
he's dragging and dropping chains of bones. So he wants this body bone here to be able to control those
Yeah.
bones, right? So what he did to do that is he grabbed the root cape and this other root cape and dragged them under this body bone. You can see as you're dragging it highlights what it's going to drop into. So you can drop it there and you can drop it there, and now you'll see that under this body bone here we can rotate it together, but we can also move this root bone and everything moves together.
Yeah.
We haven't connected stuff yet, but if we wanted to make things move, we could do that. All right. There's also, by the way, while you're building these chains, you could have done what he did here by selecting this bone. If you hit B and you make a new bone, it's starting it from there. I think we have a modifier to do that. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that now, but there's a way to hit, I think, Command or Alt. There we go, Alt. If you hold Alt while you have a bone selected, it creates a new root directly under it. But anyway, the dragging and dropping is a quick way to be able to see what's actually happening. So hopefully that makes sense. We now have our chain of bones. What are we going to do?
Connect the different parts to the body.
Okay. So we're going to connect. Are you connecting them with hierarchy? Like dragging and dropping the images?
I think for the head and the body, I draw the elements to the.
Okay. So we're gonna grab
Here.
we're gonna grab our character images now, and we're gonna parent them or make them children of the bones.
Yeah. For example, body.
So body here goes under the body bone.
Okay. And head is this.
And then the head is gonna drag that under the head bone.
And now I can.
And now if he hits R to rotate, you can see that if you rotate the head bone,
Can make the pose of the character.
you can sort of pose the character however you want.
Something like this.
Okay.
For the cape, I need weight. The
Okay, so
bones.
now what he did here is he connected the images to the bones by simply making them children of the bones. And that's a really easy way. You can see here in the hierarchy that our image is under that bone. Now there's another way to connect things to bones, and that's by connecting their vertices to the position of specific bones, and that allows for mesh deformations.
Yeah.
And he's going to do that now by selecting the cape. And
Here, the
yeah,
path.
and you select the path. That's right. So you need to make sure you don't select the shape. Select the path under the shape, and you get this connected bones property in the inspector. So in the inspector, hit connected bones, and now you're in the select bones mode. And which bones are you going to select?
I need the body and the cape, and the
Okay.
all bones of the cape.
So the main body bone and then the 3 cape bones. We're going to connect those to that shape. Hit done.
Okay.
And
And now I have
yeah,
bone.
now you can see that you've got these bones connected to that shape. And if you try to move these now, what's going to happen? We haven't done any weighting, which you're going to see what that does, but yeah, it's not actually connected yet. Nothing's happening.
It's connected to the first bone by default.
Oh, that's right. So the first bone that you selected. So rotate that.
Here.
Yeah. But you connected this bone, so that's moving because this bone is connected to it, right?
Yeah, I connected this. Yeah.
So yeah, so if you were to move this, and that's because if we go into this now, like, do you want to show the weights?
Okay.
So if
Yeah,
you go
weights.
into edit vertices, you'll see that we can now see different colors on these bones, and that's because they are weighted with this object, and you want to hit the edit weights.
Edit weights.
Yeah. So if you select all of them, just hit Command A real quick just to show everybody. Yes, you can see that all these vertices right now, when we have them selected, it's showing this little pie chart around the vertices, and that's the bone that it's weighted to. So it's currently all weighted to this bone, which is why when we were moving that bone, all the vertices were moving together. It's not really doing anything fancy. But what we want to do is we want this shape to be able to deform when we move different bones.
Yeah.
So as a real simple example, I'm going to do something that's probably not what Juan Carlos wants to do here, but I'm going to deselect that. And I'm just going to see this bone right here. I can either select it here and on the stage drag up and down to change its influence. So you'll notice that the numbers here are changing. All of these weights need to add to 1. So each vertex needs to have its weights add up to 1 with all the bones that are there. So I can also manually go here and just hit 1, and that'll zero out all the other ones. So if I do that now, just to show you how weights work, if I try to rotate this guy, you'll see that it's already deforming that because this bone here that we weighted it against is moving when I rotate also this bone. So if I rotate this bone now, you'll see that that vertex moves with it, and the other ones are staying in position because they're all weighted against that other bone. But anyway, we want to do something a little better than just that, right?
Yeah.
What do we want to do?
Okay. I want to use this option.
Okay, so he's going to make it a detached. So if you select your vertices, you can change them to Bezier curves,
Yeah,
basically,
I can.
which gives you control points to make them curves.
Something like this.
So he's going to move his control points over there.
Because I can weight.
And the
these.
reason he's doing this is that Flair allows you to also weight those control points. So you can really easily animate smooth curves by weighting the control points as well as vertices.
Okay, in the cape, this vertex is connected to the body,
Yeah.
so the color is blue.
Yep. So we want to keep it like that?
No.
No. So right now that's the color of the bone it's
yeah.
weighted to. Okay.
And this vertex
Is
have
pink,
this
yeah,
color, yeah.
whatever
And
the color
this
is.
I want to have this color too.
Okay.
Okay.
So that
So when-
vertex is already
Yeah.
based on what we did before. It's already
Yeah,
connected
when
to that
I
bone.
move this
That,
bone,
it's not a vertex, sorry. That's a control point for
That's
your
what it-
curve. Yeah.
when I move this bone to vertex move to.
Okay. So we move the pink bone, and the vertex and its first control point above will move together. What about the second control point?
This.
That one we want it to be bound to the yellow bone over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now
Now we're done editing.
I can move.
And if you
this.
rotate it, you see that we get this pretty realistic little cloth dynamic effect happening.
This.
Yep. And then we can move that up and down,
And this.
and you get some really nice deformations.
Okay.
All right, so are we ready to start animating?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the fun part. I hope the start was fun too, but it's going to get even more riveting now. We're going to switch to animate mode. So do you want to see, you saw what he did up here? He switched from design mode to animate mode. You can also hit tilde on the keyboard to quickly shift between the two. And we're going to add some animation. So we're going to make this pretty simple because I don't know, how are we doing for time, by the way? 8:30, we got another half hour?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we don't want to make this too long.
We like to leave some time for questions.
And we want to leave some time for questions, yeah. So let's make 3 simple keyframes. How many do you need?
It's very fast. I need
Okay.
to
So
this.
he's zooming in on the timeline here. You can see that there's this the scroll bar up here. Let me just explain how this works. This lets you pan the timeline. You can also use the shortcut we talked about on the stage. Hit spacebar to pan, or right click and drag to pan. And what he did here is he grabbed the external handle here to be able to scale the zoom level. So we don't, by default, our animation is 10 seconds long. We don't want our animation to be 10 seconds long. We want the cape to billow pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we could change this here, but it's nice to have the extra space here to play with. So we're just gonna zoom in to, how long do you think you need? Like
Use
30 frames?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll stop right there so we can see 30 frames there, which, since we're at 60 frames per second, that's half a second.
I think I need these two.
He's going to turn on the
Sorry.
work area, which lets him basically set the loop point of this animation.
Because it's very fast.
Yeah, we don't want our playhead to keep moving past 30 frames when we're done, so we're just going to move it there.
Something like this,
And do you want to enable loop too, or do you not need
Yeah,
loop?
I
Yeah.
need
So
loop.
we're going to enable loop so that when the playhead hits the end of the
Like
work
this.
area, it's going to loop. So you can see now we have a looping animation.
Okay. The animation of the cape is very easy. It's like a flag. Like
Okay.
the idea is make something like this. No?
Yeah, like a sine wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want the cape to animate like a wave.
Yeah. Wanted to move this bone like this, for example.
Okay. So he's selecting the first bone,
Yeah.
and he
the
rotated it down a
second-
bit at the first frame. Then he moved to about halfway, at the halfway point of the
Yeah,
timeline,
this-
right?
Yeah. And the third, like copy and paste.
Okay. So you can copy paste frames. So he's grabbing the first frame, copying it, and pasting it at the end.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to make a perfect loop.
Yeah. So if your keyframe at the start and at the end are the same, you get perfect loops.
Yeah. And I want to.
And then with all the keys selected, he's going to change it to a cubic interpolation. Now, what you're seeing down here is the interpolation of a keyframe. If you don't have a key selected, you won't see anything in here. So make sure you select at least one frame. We want both of them here selected. You could select all 3, but that doesn't really matter in this case, because what interpolation does is that it affects, I'll show you by expanding our cape here. You'll see this rotation key that we're adding. If I select here, what's actually being affected with this interpolation is the interpolation from this key to the second key. So everything here gets affected by this curve here. And then everything here gets affected by this curve here. So selecting here, because we don't have another frame after here, there's nothing is going to happen. It doesn't matter. We can apply interpolation to it, but it's not necessary. So we're going to select these first frames, and you made them cubic, and a cubic interpolation basically makes it so that if you watch when this guy moves, or this bone here rotates from left to right, you'll see that if we make it linear, the movement is the same every frame. So I can use Command arrow key to move one frame at a time. You'll see that the movement is exactly the same on every frame. It's moving the same distance, the same amount. So it's a linear movement. It's not really organic. This is very mechanical. If you wonder why your animations aren't smooth looking, they look kind of robotic, and you're like, God, this looks chuggy. It's running at 60 frames per second, but it doesn't look like it's smooth. That's probably because you're not using the right interpolation. And so if we do add a really quick, I have both of these frames selected again, so I'm going to apply it to our whole animation. If you quickly go to cubic, it does this, what's in animation is called an easy in and an easy out. It's an easy ease. So it's got a slow start, then it speeds up towards the middle, and then it slows down at the end. And you'll notice now that if I hit Command arrow key, watch that first frame barely moves. You probably can't even see it on the projector. And then as I keep going, it starts moving more and more, and so you start noticing it more. And then once it passes that halfway threshold, it starts slowing down again, and the movements get smaller and smaller and smaller, where you can't almost see it again here. And when we play this back, notice a difference with that and with linear. See how much less interesting that is? It's kind of robotic. We go cubic, easy ease, and it's smoother. And we can also exaggerate that, so we can make it really slow at the end and really slow at the start. And we'll get even more of this like bouncy, but that's a little too much, I think. So I'll hand it back to Juan Carlos. What did you want to do here? What was the ease? Is that what you wanted? Easy ease?
Yeah, easy ease.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, and now I want to do the same with that bone.
Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with the second bone.
I can
The
copy
second
the K because it's rotation.
Yeah, so because rotation is additive,
Yeah.
we can just copy and paste the same rotation values,
Take this.
and we can apply them to our second bone here. Make sure that you put your playhead at the same spot you copied it from, because you're going to paste it at the playhead. And we pasted the same rotation.
But in this case, it's too much.
Yeah, in this case it's too much.
Yeah. Take this.
So what he's doing here, what this button does, is it shows, if you hover over it, you'll get a tooltip. It shows only your selected item. So say you have a lot of items in your timeline, you don't want to get confused with what you're animating, you can only show the selected item here. If I disable it, you'll see I see all my animated items, cape 1 and cape 2. But so if I deselect, now I still see all of them. If I enable this, I'm only seeing what's selected. So I can select that bone, and I know I'm only working on that. So it's an easy way to make sure you're not messing up any other keyframes.
Okay. Well, it's too much. The
Yep.
rotation.
So he's going to bring it in a bit so it's not so
This,
exaggerated.
for example.
And then you're going to copy the start and paste it at the end so that, yeah, it still loops perfectly.
But now it's not good now
Yeah.
because all bones rotate in the same moment.
Okay, so all the bones are moving together now, so you get kind of this
Yeah.
robotic movement because the bones are, see how they line, if we disable the show selected, see how the animation is stacked on top of each other? That's how robotic movement works. If you want things to look natural, you want to offset things a little bit. So it depends. It might be what you want. You know, if you're creating something like a car and you want this, you don't want wheels to move separately one from another. You want them to move together. But in this case, we want to offset a little bit. So
Yeah.
we still want our loop to work though. This is where we want to make sure we do the right thing. So the start and the end keys are going to stay,
Yeah.
and we're going to move the middle one.
No, in this case, I
I
want
know.
to change all
Okay.
because I want a different effect. I want something like this.
Okay. So he's going to move
Yeah.
them. He's going to offset them completely by like about 25%.
Oh, sorry. I need to move to the other side.
Okay, you want to move it back.
Yeah. I
So
need
what are you going to do?
change the. Okay, sorry. Oh, sorry. I need a new
Keyframe?
keyframe. Yeah.
Okay. So what did you do to do that?
I need to move this
Yeah?
in this position.
I see. So he wants us to start at this frame. So you can add a key at the current spot you're at for the rotation by hitting, is it Shift R?
Yes.
So Shift R, we've now keyed the rotation. So basically, if you look at our tools here, we've got T for translate, R for rotate, S for scale, X for forget the IK pose. If we want to quickly add a key, we can hit Shift that key to shift that shortcut. But you could also do this by just hitting the key button right there for this rotation, or up here, this key button. So you can just key rotation. And you want to move this back now?
Yeah, I think. No. I think it's better like this. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I wanted to move this. It's
You want to
better.
move the first
Yeah.
cape bone. Okay.
Yeah, because I move in this position. This is the idea.
Okay.
Okay.
See what's happening there? The first bone is leading the second bone.
I think we have. Sorry. This is okay. I need to change. This is too much.
The rotation is too
Sorry.
much. No, you're
Sorry.
adding a new key.
Sorry.
So by the way, animation is a ton of tweaking and like doing a lot of this iteration. So
Yeah.
what you're seeing here is totally normal. In fact, it would probably take a lot longer if we were doing this for the first time. So don't feel discouraged. You know, the first thing you're going to make is probably not going to look great, and it's going to take a lot of this iteration to get it to look right. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to offset the second bone.
Yeah,
Right.
I have a problem with the second bone. I wrong something. But
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to start over on the second bone.
Yeah, I have this bone. Okay. Take the second bone.
We're going to key the second bone at the start to rotate down a bit at the start and make it kind of straight towards the middle. Then again, copy and paste your first bone to the end so that it loops perfectly.
Yeah, I have this.
Okay.
And now like this. This is the effect. Okay.
Okay.
This
So
is
you
the
can
effect.
see that you get this organic movement, like
Yeah,
an
it's
almost chain
The
motion.
first bone move and the second move later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So show that one more time at the start. Watch what happens when the
Like
first.
this.
It's like a physics thing, right? You
Yeah.
want the first bone to move and the second bone to catch up as the first one is moving. So
Yeah.
you want it to move a little bit later,
Yeah, I can rotate this something more.
and you can exaggerate it a
Yeah,
little
the
bit
effect
too.
is more now.
Yeah.
This is the effect. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I need put this here.
Okay, we need to make a cubic again so
Yeah.
that it looks good.
But now the loop is broken.
Yeah. So because he moved it, now if you try to hit play, you'll see that the loop is broken.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
see,
broken, the
that's
loop.
not what we want.
Okay. I need fish.
So
Fix
to
this.
fix that, that's our end point right there,
Yeah.
which if you remember, that's also our start point. That's the same key we want at the start. So you can hit the key button here, key of the rotation, right? So
Key.
shift R or key right there,
Okay,
right? Key
here.
right there, yeah.
And copy this part
Yeah.
and paste it.
So copy that key and paste it back at the
This
start.
I can delete.
Yeah, and delete the last one.
But the curve here is
Yeah.
perfect from this K to this K.
Yeah.
But
Our interpolation changed a little bit now.
here,
Yeah.
I don't want
You don't want it out.
exactly.
Yeah. You want it to be a little more subtle.
Yeah, because
It's a
the
half,
movement is
yeah.
like this. And
We cut that part in half. So we want the ease in there, but we don't want an ease out, and we want an ease out here, but we don't want an ease in. So basically we're creating half of the curve that we had
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
And now if you play it, there you go. That looks great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Good job, good job. No, that's good. That's
Okay.
that's the fun part of live doing this stuff. Yeah.
And now the other bone.
You're guaranteed to run into
Yeah.
this when you're doing it yourself.
No.
So now they'll know how to do that if they have that same problem.
I have the cape something like this.
Yep.
For a better movement, I need the other bone make moving like this.
Yeah.
Hmm?
So you want the bottom part of the cape to flap kind of with the opposite movement
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
outside
because
of the
if
cape.
I don't move now, the bottom of the cape is static.
It's flat. Yeah. It doesn't look
Yeah.
good. It has no depth at the bottom. Yeah.
And when the cape is down, this part is down. When the cape is up, this part is up.
Yeah.
This is
Again, think
it's
of it.
simple.
Think of it as physics. A common tool animators use all the time is they'll grab whatever they're trying to animate it and either look at a reference video or just do it in real life. You know, grab a shirt that you have hanging around and move it up
Yeah.
and down, film it, and load it on your computer or on your phone, your iPad, whatever you have nearby, and look at what's happening. And a lot of time that's all it takes to make a great animation is to understand what's happening in the real world. And so what he's saying here is that we want this bottom of the cape to move with that movement.
Yeah.
Basically, as the cape goes up, the bottom needs to come up, but it needs to be staggered, right? So that it looks like it's got that physics effect.
Yeah.
All right. So how are you going to do that?
Okay. Now the feels because the cape is down. I move.
All right. So at the
one like this.
start, we're going to move it down. We're going to move that bone down. And again,
Okay.
this is weighted to the vertices. So as we move it, we're also moving the cape vertices.
And here I move.
All right, so he's at the halfway point now, and he's bringing it back up.
like this, and the other, take this, and copy this.
All right, we'll copy the XY position at the start and paste it at the end so that it's exactly the same. And we're going to make it cubic easing again. So basically
Yes.
easy ease. Oh, that's great. So you can hide the bones. So you have a visibility toolbar up here. You can show bones or hide bones. And yeah, good job.
Thank you.
All right, so we should probably get this loaded in Flutter and see how it looks.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably want to add some more stars up here eventually. In our initial demo that we had, the stars were animating and rotating a little bit too. You can play around with that, add more animation now that you know how to do it, and you can make it look as crazy rich as you want to. Load another PSD that's got some fog and some like a cloud effect or something, and make it move in front of everything. You can make this look super detailed. But we're gonna stop this here and just load it into our Flair file or our Flutter file, and see what we created. So we're gonna go to our Finder, Downloads, and just replace that. Hopefully our simulator's still running. Yeah, so Shift R.
I have to rename the
And
animation.
so it's not animating and we've got a draw order problem, because we need to give the animation the correct name that Luigi's code is looking for. So Luigi's animation is looking for idle, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, all lowercase.
So our name here of this animation is Untitled, so we failed. We did not name our animation here, which is bad practice. We want to always name something. So idle is what we're going to call it, and that happens to be what our code is looking for. But we also want to fix this odd bug here where you'll see that the hand, and it's actually Hamilton, the character, that what happened when we dragged it into the bone.
Yeah.
We changed the order of it.
Yeah.
So let's go back here. Let's go back into design mode. We can't change our hierarchy in animate mode, or it's better not to anyway. You want to make sure all your undo stack stays in the design mode, and you can see here that our root body is down here and our character is up here. So I'm gonna hide it real quick. That's our root body. So we're gonna just grab it and move it into the original node here of the character. So drag and drop. Now our character is all one object. And if I move it, I don't have it selected. If I have it selected and I move it, see it's all one. Undo that. Let's re-export it. And replace our file one last time. Hot reload.
Restart.
Or hot restart, just kidding. I'm obviously not the engineer. And there you go. We've got our Hamilton character animating, and we've got some depth. And you can keep adding stuff and make it look more rich, but that's, I think, where we're going to stop the workshop and hear from what everyone here wants to know. If you have questions, if you want Luigi to go through more code and explain something more, it's open to all of you. I don't know, Martin, if you or David wanted to say anything else, but I think we're ready for some questions.
I think now's a good time to ask, Guido and Luigi, any questions you have about Flair in general, or about anything that you saw in the workshop. Take the opportunity. And all I would ask you guys, if you could repeat the question just for the mic.
Sure, yeah. So Martin's saying we should repeat the question so that Mike will pick them up. And also, we have our star animator here from Spain. He, like I mentioned at the start, he's done a lot of the stuff that you've probably seen. So if you have questions for him too, happy to do that. So, right up front. Yeah.
Can you do 3D animations?
So the question is, can you do 3D? You cannot yet. We've considered it. We've looked into it. We have other stuff we'd like to support first in Flair, like adding more interactivity to the tool. We have a roadmap on our site, and we have a lot of feedback from users. There's a lot of requests like tech support, which is coming soon. We actually haven't publicly announced that yet, but you're the first to hear that. We are adding real tech support to Flair, which is more than just basic, typing text. You can actually create different styles and animate them separately. But back to your question, we do not have 3D support right now.
There's also
So yeah, Blake is saying that we do have mesh deformations, which are more advanced than what we it's the starts of what we showed you here, but it creates pretty sophisticated looking deforms like what you see on Blake's profile. So if I go to explore here, there's artists and maybe for hire is a quick way to find Blake. Here he is. And you'll see, let's see which character, let's go this guy. You'll see that you can create some pretty compelling looking depth effects. And the cool thing about this is that it looks 3D, but it's really not taxing on GPUs or CPUs on your mobile phone. You can run this stuff and it won't be as taxing on your system as full 3D. So what was the second question?
How is compared to Loki?
Okay, so the question is how does this compare to Lottie? And that's a good question because it's actually something that we get pretty often. We get asked for Lottie support, and so there's a few key differences between Lottie and our platform, and the biggest one is that Lottie.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Lottie or Haiku tools because Lottie is for After Effects.
Yeah. So yeah, and he also mentioned Haiku Animator, which is another animation tool. So Haiku Animator specifically is so I'll take one at a time. Lottie is a library. So Lottie is a small portion of what we do, but it's really geared towards After Effects users because the After Effects, the whole Lottie pipeline is basically After Effects. That's your IDE for animating, and then there's a body movement plugin, and then there's Lottie, which is the runtime. So Lottie is just the part that you load in your app that allows you to load a body movement file and watch it play back. But the key difference with what we're trying to do that's different from what After Effects lets you do is that Flair is really made for interactive content, and After Effects is not. After Effects is made for video. So they're fundamentally different. In After Effects and Lottie are a great way to get a single animation into your app. If you want to just have like an onboarding animation or something that's a lot more like a video that plays from A to B, that's great. That lets you use your existing tools and export them and get it to run. But you don't have interactivity in After Effects. You can't create stuff like blending animation. So for example, if I have a character, like a video game character is a really good example. And we talked before about that shoot animation, right? So I've got a character that's kind of idling and they're just standing there, maybe breathing. But then there's also a walk cycle where they're walking. And then I've got a shoot animation. And I want the character to be able to walk and shoot and idle and shoot and maybe run and shoot and swim and shoot and fly and shoot. If you were trying to do something interactive like that in After Effects, you'd have to create every single different permutation of that. With Flair, you can just create the shoot animation, the walk animation, and the run animation, and the idle animation. Like, you just create your single animations, and you can blend them together. So if my character is running and I want it to shoot, I can then mix it. Similarly, if I want the character to stand, walk, and run, I can blend between those, and I don't need to create a slow walk, a slightly faster walk, a run, and then a sprint. I can just blend between those two things, and I can do that in the editor. I can actually, I don't have a great example to pull up here, but you can blend animations together. Do you guys think of a good example on our site that shows that? Oh, the penguin's a good one, yeah. So let's go to A/Juan Carlos here. And let's find his penguin animation, this guy right here. So if we open it in Flair, you'll see that there's a kind of this walk or head bob animation. And then there's let me pause that, switch over to the walk animation, and this walk animation. So I can, at the same time here, hit play on both of them, and now we're mixing them. So now he's walking and bobbing his head, or I can stop it, and he's only bobbing his head now. And other tools like After Effects just doesn't have this concept. Because everything has to pre-render as you're playing it back, it's not made for interactive content. And Lottie only actually supports, I believe, one animation, so it's just not possible to do this. So the other part that gets difficult, that we particularly care about, is that everything that you do in Flair, because it's Skia, particularly with Flutter that also runs Skia, so we run the same engine, everything that you do in Flutter when you in Flair, when you export it, it's gonna look exactly the same in Flutter. You're guaranteed that it's gonna work, unless we've got a bug and you need to report that and we need to fix that. It's gonna look exactly the same. You know that the fidelity is the same. Whereas After Effects, Body Movement, Lottie, those are 3 separate parties that do separate things. And when you're exporting something from After Effects, you don't know that the thing that you might have built is going to work in your final output until you try it. There's some trial and error. You know, After Effects is huge. They've got tons of plugins and different ways to animate, and the Body Movement plugin only supports a subset of those, and you kind of discover as you're going what's going to work. Flair is really made to do everything you can do here is going to work. You know that you can only do it. It's focused just on that. Your other question was Haiku Animator. So I've seen it. I haven't looked too much into it. I believe all these tools we've looked at come from either they're sort of like a simpler animation perspective. I believe they export to SVG, so they don't. Okay.
Is Haikus like that reduce After Effects?
Yeah. They're like they do some translation stuff. They don't have bones. I think they don't have constraints. We're going after more of a really make animation tools, like really advanced animation tools, are typically only available for either motion graphics or game designers, and make them available to everyone. And that's another big difference, is that Flair is free. So we really want to make sure that everybody can access this, and After Effects is not a free product. I think Haiku might not be either. Yeah. Another question here.
Is this specifically only for Flutter, or is there like
No,
iOS,
so
Android?
So the question is this only for Flutter, or is there iOS, Android? And the answer is that we have multiple runtimes. If you go to 2dimensions.com/runtimes, you can see all the different runtimes that we officially support. There's actually another one that's not listed here, which is C++, which we haven't exposed yet, but if you go to our 2D Inc. GitHub repository, you'll find C++ there. And all our runtimes are open source, so you can grab any of these and port them to any platform. We currently don't have Unity 2, but that is coming soon. That's something that we want to support and we care about. The Unity community is a big part of NEMA, our older tool, and we want to make sure that they're supported. The one you asked about, Android, we do not have Android yet, but we don't have anything against it. It's just something we haven't had a huge request for, and we've been busy adding new features to Flair and making sure that we support our current runtimes. But again, they're all open source. Anybody can grab these, and we'd be thrilled if someone wanted to start supporting their own runtime for whatever product they care about. There were a few other questions. Yeah, in the front here. Guy with the beard. Yeah.
Okay.
The bigger beard.
For like a developer who's just trying to get into design,
Yeah.
trying to make cool like designs like that penguin.
Yeah.
Where do I get started?
All right, so the question is, if I'm a developer and I'm not a designer and I want to get started with making cool animations like this penguin, where do I get started? And I personally think the answer is there's tons of tutorials on how to make cool designs and cool animations. Flair we are working, actually the team sitting over here is going to be helping us a lot on creating better documentation, better tools, better training, and we have that in the works. We know it's something that we are currently struggling on, and we need to help our users get better at it. But if you want to get started, you can learn illustration. You can take a course on Illustrator, Sketch, and Vector, Photoshop, like we showed you importing a Photoshop file, and then animation as well. Animation is really transformation, translations, rotations, scale. That's the basics of it. We have some tutorials on our site. If you go to docs, actually if you just go to 2dimensions.com, this will be easier to remember, and you scroll down here, you'll see that we have tutorials right here, but we also have our manual. So if you go to the manual, that's a really good spot to learn a lot, and we also have the tutorials listed in the manual. And I've written a lot of these. Some people from the community have written a few. Mandy's working on some. This isn't loading right now, but there's one on Medium. If you go to our blog, I think we might have lost our internet connection, but if you go to our blog here, yeah, I think our internet connection went down. Oh no, it's back. And you click on tutorials on our blog, you'll see that one of the really first ones I made a while back was this bouncing ball, and that'll get you started with how to create use the basic fundamentals of animation, which was based off of something I tweeted a while back in December. It got a lot of likes, and I decided to write this blog post about it, which basically covers Disney's 12 principles of animation and shows you how to create this really simple bouncing ball. And we start with just like moving it up and down, and then you end up creating something that I believe in the final part actually has arches, and oh, here we go. You'll end up creating this bounce animation that has squash and stretch and a lot of the principles of animation. And I think, you know, that's a really great spot to start. Animators typically in school will, you know, one of their first classes will be learn how to make a bouncing ball. So that's a good spot to start. And then, yeah, character design, any illustration course, any Photoshop course, anything, not even courses, like just watch some YouTube videos. If you're passionate about it, you just got to put the time into it. That's all it takes. Is that right? Is there anything you want to add to it? Okay. And we had one question more in the back there.
Yeah. I was just curious what open source, but I don't know what framework they use to build the editor itself.
So the editor is not built off of any open source tools,
Well,
right, Luigi?
I mean,
do you want to talk about it?
So the actual renderer itself is Skia. So we use a web-assembled version of Skia. You can get, you can actually get it from the Skia website. One version of it. Ours is slightly different, but it's basically the same. They call it Canvas Kit, and it's basically just a web-assembled version of Skia. So we use that. We use Webpack. We use React for the UI. That's really the bulk of it. Those are basically, yeah, that's it. We have considered converting it in the future to actually be Flutter and Flutter Web, but it's something we're still actively looking at. It's right now that this route works really well for us. We really like having the deep integration with Skia. We have a bunch of new features coming in which take advantage of some really powerful features in Skia, like being able to render to a texture, to do caching of really complex shapes. Some of the text stuff that we're adding in, it's just really nice for us to have that really tight integration with Skia. But we are really strongly considering Flutter because it's you know, such a great platform to work with that we ourselves, you know, after we built this tool, we realized, you know, we could kind of do the inception and build the tool with what it's exported to.
I guess as a follow-up question to that, what kind of, I guess, what level of mathematics do you need to know to build the tool?
Repeat the question.
So sorry, the question was what kind of math kind of goes into, you know, building a tool like this. And for the most part, it's linear algebra, just a ton of linear algebra. It's also what goes into a lot of game design and development. That's really the most important mathematical thing to kind of figure out. And the fun thing about it with graphics programming really is that it gives you really good visual feedback. So you learn quickly where you're messing up, and the mathematics starts making sense really fast as you figure some of these things out. Yeah. Do we have time for more, Martin?
Sure, yeah.
All right.
Just a follow-up. Why did you do web instead of just desktop?
Repeat the question. So sorry, can you repeat it again, actually?
Why did you do it on web instead of just doing it on desktop?
Oh, so the question is, why did we build Flair for the web instead of desktop? So it actually, it was a reason for us that came out of our old company. Before we were doing this, we were building video games, and we actually built all the tools for those video games online. And the reason we chose that was because some of the other people that we were working with weren't quite as technical as we have been with building the software. So we didn't want them to have to kind of get bleeding edge software, either learn how to recompile it. We wanted to do some really fancy stuff which required custom software. And we quickly realized that if we just deployed it to the web and gave them a URL, they could go and open up the tool and always be up to date, have a system that will save everything as they're doing it. They don't need to worry about files or sending them to other people. It'll synchronize everything for them. And we quickly realized that that was kind of an awesome system. And that's what we heard from a lot of the people that saw our games. They liked our games, but they were almost more interested in our tools. And we realized that there was really an opportunity to kind of build more than just tools that were specific to one game. We could build something that was a more generic tool that could work across multiple platforms and be, something like this, which lets you build animation for UI. in the web, and then there's nothing to install. So that was really kind of the inspiration for it. And then as we started working on it, there have been a lot of challenges along the way with making that work on the web. But we really do think that the web is ready now for these high-end tools, and we hope to see more of them.
One more here.
Flair is free. What sort of business model are you guys?
Yeah, so if you saw, the question was, Flair is free, how does that work for your business? And as you heard at the start, we're offering a yearly subscription to Flair, and what that means is that yes, Flair is free. If you want to use it and share your files with the world, you don't have to pay anything. You can think of Flair sort of like GitHub for designers. Basically, the only time you have to pay is if you want to have private files. If you don't want to share your work with anyone and mark them private, we support that. We just have a really simple yearly or monthly subscription that you can subscribe to keep your files private.
And one thing that is different from GitHub, though, is that your files don't necessarily need to be modifiable by other people. So if you make your file public, you, by default, as you saw, someone interrupted to ask if we could make it to enable allow fork. That means that the file is only read-only. So people can't copy your work, they can't export it, they can't use it in their product. It automatically puts a no license on your file, which is something we link to GitHub, which explains that if you have no license, you're actually already protected by copyright, and nobody can legally use it without being at risk of having it taken down or you reporting them and being able to request damages or whatever the legal side of it is. It's described in the license. And so your work is really protected. If you make it public and you don't allow fork, you still get all the benefits of a free tool, but the thing we ask you to give back is to allow other users to learn from you, to basically be able to open it up and see what you're doing and learn from one another, which is something that we think has benefited the development community significantly. We have a blog post about it that has a quote that I really like that's from Newton that says that I think it was Newton, Isaac Newton, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And that means that we are where we are today because some other genius before us did something, and some other genius before him did something, and some other genius before her did even something else. And we wouldn't be able to be where we are if those things weren't free and available for all of humanity to be able to use. And so we think that design has been in this, especially a lot of designers have this very secretive mentality where you work on it, you polish it, and it's got to be perfect, and it's got to be revealed when it's perfect. And instead, I think there's a lot that people can learn from seeing your missteps and your iterations and what we were doing today when we were showing you how that animation worked. It's good to see for you to see us mess up, and because now you'll know if you run into that and your cape or whatever you're trying to make loop isn't animating perfectly because you want to cut it in half at a specific point. The challenge we ran into, and how to fix that. And we think that that's something powerful that we're trying to apply to the design world, and we have bigger ideas for that we hope to be able to push even further.
All right.
Just wanted to say thank you on behalf of everybody. So, thanks for coming, and we'll see you on August 7th.